Well, Shabbat Shalom. Here we are again. There's a lot, but I'm thinking of a specific kind of a TikTok going around, or, a video, we'll say, where parents are giving their unpopular parenting opinions that they happen to have. And they'll say what it is, and you go, ooh, I wonder if that's me, or maybe that's not me. Like, I don't give my kid a bath every day, or I don't let my kid go to sleepovers. And I saw one, I went, oh, that's unpopular. Where someone said, I don't make my kid hug anyone they don't want to. And I thought, oh, is that unpopular? Because I don't make my kid hug anyone. And I didn't know that was so unpopular, but thinking about it, I think that might be a rather unpopular opinion. But isn't that often the case when it comes to holding boundaries, physical boundaries, or emotional boundaries? Sometimes it's unpopular. Boundaries are a necessary part of life, what you will do or what you won't do. But sometimes I think we're kind of pushed to think of our boundaries as impediments or inconveniences to others, instead of what they really are, which is tools, necessary tools, that help us navigate life. Judaism certainly thinks boundaries are tools, and here's how I know. In the Torah this week, we read about how the people have been freed from slavery. Finally, they're marching through the desert. God provides manna, yum, as much as everyone needs every day you take. And you take twice as much on Friday, in anticipation of Shabbat, because the people have been told, Ish tachtav, let every person remain in their place. Al yatzeh ish mimkomo, let no one leave their boundary on Shabbat in order to gather food, outside, that manna, and bring it into their home. So, because they can't do that on Shabbat, they have to get twice as much on Friday. And from this little quirk, the rabbis deduced that on Shabbat, none of us are allowed to transport stuff across boundaries, out of our private homes, into public space, or vice versa. Which is why even now, that rule still stands. It's why if you're very traditional, you don't carry on Shabbat. You don't even carry your keys from your house if you're walking to shul. You don't carry, either from outside to inside or inside to outside. Now, I'm not one to argue with the rabbis. Well, that's not true. I am one to argue with the rabbis. But in this case, I don't. I buy it. I buy this whole no carrying thing, though I abide by a bit of a looser interpretation. But as with all halachic minutia, ridiculously fun specifics of Jewish law, it begs exploring, asking, okay, but why does this law even exist? What purpose does it serve to make you do this thing or not do this thing? What is it teaching? And I think this rule is meant to remind us of the importance of holding good boundaries. Because boundaries are very important. Boundaries help us create healthy structure in our lives, help us monitor and regulate our own behavior. Having good boundaries is how we don't eat cake for every single meal. It's why we don't stay up until 4 a.m. if we have to be at work at 7. It's a way of saying, this is what's okay for me, this is what's not okay for me, and here's the line that I'm not going to cross. And our boundaries are being continually tested, not out of malice, not most of the time, but in little ways. Think about it, it's always happening. Our boundaries are always being pushed. Think about it at work. It's the end of the day, and you knew you had plans to go watch your kid's performance, or you had plans to go out with your friends, and you promised. And then your boss comes to you and says, oh, can you stay late to do XYZ thing? You're being asked to violate a boundary. Or let's say you're not at work yet, you're at school, got a group project, and everyone gets assigned a task. And you think, oh, no one else is going to do the work, I might as well just do it. Or worse, you get asked to do other people's work. That's a boundary violation. Or just interactions with other people in general. There's a very fine line between doing something outside of your comfort zone and doing something that's crossed a line. You know what your line is, that violates your boundaries. And that's a tough situation no matter how old you are. Everyone can think of a time that they were asked to do something or to not do something that they were uncomfortable with by someone that they cared about. That's a tough place to be in. There's even boundaries we have for ourselves that we violate. We set goals, we make resolutions, we have dreams we aspire to, and sometimes we are our own worst enemies. Sometimes it's minor stuff. I'm going to do the dishes tonight. I'm not going to leave dishes in the sink. I hate when I wake up and there's a sink full of dishes. And then what do you know? You wake up the next morning and your sink is full of dirty dishes. Whose fault is that? And then you feel bad. And sometimes there's some major ways we violate our own personal boundaries we've set. I'm not going to use XYZ substance. This is my budget this month, and I'm sticking to it. I'm not going to engage with this person. Whenever I do, it damages my mental health and my emotional health. I can't do that. It hurts me. Or I'm going to be kind to myself about XYZ thing. I'm not going to talk bad to me for doing or being a certain way. I can't use that negative language when talking to myself about myself. But holding those personal boundaries can be really hard. And when they're violated, it feels awful. And the consequences can be pretty bad. We do unsafe things. We engage in unhealthy dynamics. The Jewish law about teaching us not to cross physical boundaries serves to teach us about the importance of not crossing personal ones. Serves to teach us that holding on to our boundaries is not selfish, it's holy. I think a lot of the time sticking to boundaries is seen as rude. Oh, you don't want to do this thing? You don't want to go to this place? Why? Like, really, why? Like, we're doing it. Or it's seen as selfish. That if you don't want to work when you're supposed to be off, or you're not taking on other people's responsibilities, that you're somehow not a team player. Or that it's just not nice. Oh, but I'll be sad if I don't get a hug. But Judaism seeks to remind us that holding boundaries kindly but firmly, it's not just healthy, but holy, because it is holy to honor your needs, whether they're physical or emotional. So no, I don't force my toddler to hug anyone he doesn't want to. If he wants to hug, that's fine. But I want him to be able to say, I need space for my body, confidently. I want him to know that he can greet people in a way that's comfortable for him. If he's not feeling huggy, he can high five, he can wave. And frankly, I hope that by teaching him that no one can demand access to his body, he's also learning that he cannot demand access to anyone else's. And that's an important lesson for all of us. It's never too early taught or too often reinforced that we are all allowed to hold boundaries over our bodies, our time, our resources, our energy. That is not selfish. That's an act of holiness, commanded by our Torah itself. Never feel bad about your boundaries, no matter how unpopular it may seem. Shabbat Shalom.